Welcome to iveeffedup Revenge, where OP tickets a guy amounting to thousands of pounds. The story is from Reddit user SC2 Superjack. Mocked disabled, justice is served many years later. Many years ago, I worked in the lovely career of retail. Ah, yes, the lovely world of retail. It's sadly normal for there to be a constant flow of shop scum that make you despise their existence. And there are those that are so horrific that what they do is burned into your mind forever. Fortunately, one of these unforgettable moments allowed me to exact my revenge. I had only worked in retail for a year in this newly built store and was starting to settle in. Getting to know the great customers and understanding that some people shouldn't be allowed outside. Which, being a shy person who hates conflict, wasn't the best, but at least one of my customers was an absolutely adorable elderly lady who always made time to talk and was an absolute joy to be with. It had been some weeks since I had last seen her, but one morning, I see her car park into the disabled parking bay as she already has a blue badge. Only this time, she hobbled out of the car on crutches with a pot on her leg. I didn't have a chance to talk to her yet when a work truck, which did not have a blue disabled badge, pulled into the disabled space next to her and out-jumped a builder in his early 40s with his teenage kid. Well, this little old lady was having none of this, and must have absolutely massive balls of steel, as she stood up to this ignorant builder and politely informed him that they should be parking there, as it was for the disabled and he doesn't have a badge. Let's go, Gran, you tell him! What happened next? I can't forget. This builder decided that the best course of action was to humiliate and insult this poor elderly lady in crutches, accuse her of faking her disability, and claim the cast on her leg was a fake, and that she probably milks the benefit system for as much money as possible. Then walks off putting an overdramatic fake limp, laughing away with her teenage kid whilst the old lady stood there in shock. Wow, this guy's on a whole other level of crap hole. Anyways, let's continue. Sadly, being one who lacks courage, I did absolutely nothing about it, and that would stick with me forever. I tried feebly asking the manager later to do something about it, but they didn't care or just didn't want to get involved. Man, if this was me, letting something like this happen and doing nothing about it is gonna stick with me for the rest of my life. For years, I worked in the store, always seeing this scum builder come in and out. Fortunately, I never interacted with this scum builder, but I saw them often, and every time I did, I would always remember what they had done vividly. I would still see them park in the disabled base, and even got to the point where I would recognize them by the large blue Mercedes that they drove. I wonder if there's like a rumor for Mercedes owners, like you know how BMW drivers are? Who knows? Anyway, let's go on. 7 years later, I was still working in this store, and this scum was still parking in the disabled parking bays and looking like an absolute jerk. Yet this year, I was blessed with good fortune, and our store was outfitted with some absolutely joyful equipment. Due to the high number of complaints, our store had set up a company to deal with the parking violations. But instead of having external parties coming in and ticketing cars, the staff of the store were given the ticketing machines, and it was our duty to go to the car park and record any cars that violated the parking rules. This was all done digitally, and there would be no paper tickets upon the cars. This was brilliant. As soon as I found out, I knew what I was going to do. Yes you do. Right, here we go. It didn't take long for me to learn how to use the machine, and it certainly didn't take long for the opportunity to get revenge, and so it began. There were 3 rules for parking, and if you break any of these rules, there is a lovely £80 fine in return each time it happened. The first rule: no parking in disabled without a badge. And I know well that the scum builder is certainly violating this rule. It wasn't long until I saw him next, and as soon as he entered the store, I quickly scurried out with the ticketing machine. Lo and behold, there was the oversized blue Mercedes in the closest disabled bay, with no badge. I smashed them car details in with some well-shot photos and sent the report off, so they would receive a lovely letter of their fine that they would be asked to pay. That's not enough though. Fortunately, it takes weeks for them to finally receive the ticket, which grants me the opportunity to constantly ticket their parking violations. Because as you would expect, the scum would always park in disabled. And as I worked at the front of the store, I would always know when they had parked. After ticketing their cars dozens of times, The scum unfortunately learned their lesson as their oversized blue Mercedes no longer appeared in disabled parking bays. But as you expect, the scum would still be scum, and they would find their new parking space inside child parking. Man, disabled parking wasn't enough for this guy? Rule number 2. Don't park inside child parking without a child. I mean, of course. Had this scum gotten enough, I thought? Of course not. They haven't learned their lesson and continue to be a complete wanker and park in the disabled parking which we didn't have many spaces for. At this point, I knew all their car details by heart and would gleefully fill out the ticketing machine as I skipped over to their car, which was violating the child parking rules, and take the photos needed for them, including the shots of their seats that bear no child seats in them. And as it became routine, this once again carried on for a few more weeks of tickets being created, and eventually they start receiving their fines. Fortunately, me being me, I am completely invisible to others and often looked over and have yet to be seen or caught. But as all good things must eventually come to an end, when the scum came into the shop, their blue turd automobile was no longer there in child parking or the disabled. Has the scum finally learned their lesson? Would you be surprised if they had not, as it didn't take long for me to find them? Rule number 3. You must park inside a marked bay. And what a surprise, the scum still manages to F this up. They would park over the line, taking 2 spaces up. Well, guess what? That's a job for me in my ticketing machine. Trying to park inside taxi parking but can't fit the big ass car in it? Boom. That ain't inside a marked bay and ka-ching! Another ticket and fine for them. Have one single wheel slightly over the white line of the bay? Well, guess what? Who technically broke the rule? That's right, Scumbag did. And there goes a few more weeks of fun until eventually, Scumbag runs out of ways that they can possibly break the rules and our company hires externally to start ticketing the cars. So my beloved weapon of justice goes to rest. Now I know what people are probably going to say, that these fines are not enforceable because of some technicality, but honestly I don't care for a few reasons. Firstly, I'm being paid to do this, so either way my time or money isn't wasted. Secondly, it did have an effect as they repeatedly changed their parking habits. And thirdly, even if they don't end up paying, they're still going to spend an F ton of time and effort trying to overturn them over and over again, having to constantly be harassed by mail. Overall, if all the fines are counted separately and added up, they would have received thousands of pounds worth of fines building up over time for being a scum. Cherry on top, about 3 years later, I walk by this piece of scum on the car park and watch as they scream at some innocent dude in a high-vis jacket, accusing them for being the one giving them all the parking fines. Which puts me at peace knowing this must have seriously got to them and caused them to still be raving mad after 3 years. Guys, imagine if the company never outsourced the ticketing. That guy would have still been receiving fines to this day. It still boggles my mind how someone could be so disrespectful to an elderly lady. Anyways, this is gonna be it for today's story. I'm looking on to trying out other types of stories. Maybe you have one of your own that you'd like to share? Send it over to my email down in the description below. Remember to subscribe, like, and hit that notification bell button. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!